It is 1:12 in the afternoon. I have to leave this house at 4:30 to make it to the airport.
Sophie, the peaches, please.
I'm really good at doing everything kind of half-assed. Good morning from my patio. I've brought you out here today because frankly, we have not used this space enough, and I put too much work into it to make it like our own little oasis. And between traveling and our work schedules, it did not get used this summer like at all. This week, I thought I would give myself the project of finishing 3 unfinished projects. And I really hope so, because if not, I have to come back and edit and say I didn't do it, and I don't want to do that. Be it undiagnosed ADHD, a lack of discipline, or just a kink for procrastination deadlines, I've gone around the house and I've gathered up my 3 longest unfinished projects. One of them I haven't touched the entire time we lived here, and Khalil looks at it often and then looks at me, and then I'm like, fine. By the way, if you're new here, my name is Belle, and I created a goal for myself to clean my craft room, complete projects that have been sitting in said craft room for months and even years, and getting everything packed and ready for our move in November. All while traveling the world every weekend, making time for my friends, and trying to clean the rest of my house for said move. And I thought, what better way to keep myself accountable than putting it on the internet for everybody to see? But let's be honest though, these videos are really just for my mom and my grandma. But if you'd like to follow along and see if I complete everything I said I'm going to do, or if I'm going to crash and burn and everything's just going to be shoved into boxes to be dealt with on the back end of this move, then you've found the right channel. I started this quilt early in 2022 while living in Louisiana with fabric I made and collected in Japan after falling in love with the textile technique Boro. It involves patchworking and mending worn-out garments using fabric, creating layered textiles that reflected the resourcefulness and resiliency of rural communities, dating all the way back to the Edo period. Some of the most beautiful examples I have seen, you cannot even tell where the original piece of fabric begins. I'm sure there's a better way to do this, but I just used some painter's tape. And every time I finished a line, I would lay down the tape again, following along my last stitching, and I mean, they're straight enough, right? So we have come to the point in the project that I remember like, I don't want to deal with that right now. And now today is the day that I deal with it. I did not make an even quilt top. There are several spots on this side and one on that end where I have no fabric here. And I was like, well, what the heck am I going to do? My original thought was I was going to take the backing and just kind of roll it over instead of doing a binding. And I don't like that now. I had this idea while finishing these 2 rows, is that this bit of fabric is clearly wider than I need it to be. So I think I'm going to cut along this faded line, because this was once a folded piece of fabric, cut this off and move this chunk over here. I think that is what we're gonna do. Why don't you make me smile? Why don't you tell me your heart? 이 순간만큼은 내게 말해줘. You're my baby. Tell me now 이제 매일 같은 시간 속에 나 이 자리에서 돌아오지 않는 너의 메아리를 기다려. This area is actually sashiko stitching, so I'm just taking extra care to match the threads that are already there so you can't see my stitching. I spent the rest of the evening as we were watching TV sewing in my loose threads. I'm not sure if this is a real technique, it just kind of, I thought maybe they'd be better caught in the binding when I sew that on. I'm just figuring it out as we go, and I think that's the fun of it. Why don't you make me smile? Why don't you tell me your heart? 이 순간만큼은 내게 말해줘. You're my baby. Tell me now 이제. Ugh. Okay, it is 3:45 on day 2 of this 3-day video, and I just finished binding, not even binding, I pinned the binding. I did not realize how much work was left on this quilt project, and I don't want to touch it. So I'm gonna take a break, and then we're gonna start project 2, because that one, hopefully, if I remember right, is not gonna take so long. Now you guys are finally gonna get to see inside of my mini bins that I thought was going to help me get my life in order, and clearly not. Comment down below and let me know if your craft room looks like mine. I got this book while living in Japan, and I never bought all the stuff that I need, like rivets and punches. I even changed this pattern up because I was supposed to have rivets for the bottom, but I just sewed it. And I actually need a stud for the front, but I don't have that. What I do have is, this used to be like a 70s briefcase messenger bag thing, and this is the buckle for it. What I'm going to do is, I think I'm just gonna cover up the holes from the pattern, since I don't have what's actually supposed to go there. And we are just gonna latch that on the front somehow. Since I have this big hole right here, I'm going to layer the bottom row just above it. I can tell you now, this is not the correct technique. I just already made a hole before I used the glue, so I needed to make sure that everything lined up. I'm usually so in my head when I start a project, but I just have to remember that it always works out in the end. With the top stitched in place, all I needed to do was figure out where the buckle would lie when it was put together, and then make sure it lined up perfectly on the front of the toolbox. Since you're supposed to make the holes before putting the toolbox together, I couldn't fit a punch inside the toolbox, but I was able to use a needle to make guides for the original holes on the buckle. For our third project, this one has not been touched for a solid 3 years, because I made it as a, you're going to Germany for so amount of time without your stuff, prep a bunch of projects that you can work on before your sewing machine and all that stuff gets here. That's what this was. I made it and had it ready to be finished once I got to Germany. So it is in fact like this for 3 years. It is 1:12 in the afternoon. I have to leave this house at 4:30 to make it to the airport. We had our transportation meeting this morning, and that's where you tell them how many boxes you think you're going to need for your living room, for your bedroom, how many couches, how many pieces of furniture, yada yada. And then all that information was just too much that I ran away and hung out with a friend, avoiding everything I need to get done. Now, I will go ahead and say this project is not going to get done in 3 hours, but it will be to a point where all that's left is hand stitching, and I can do that at any time. So if you couldn't guess at the beginning of this video, I don't ever have everything I need for a project, and same goes with this one. I had a piece of batting that was not the same size, and yes, I could have bought more, but the point of this journey is to finally use what's in my craft room. So I just Frankensteined the leftovers from the blue quilt, and it worked pretty well. I then pinned the top to the batting so that it wouldn't shift on me while we were sewing, and then I found this curtain in my stash that would make a perfect back and decided everything needed a good iron. And we wouldn't be a beginning YouTube channel without some errors, right? I have absolutely no idea what happened to the rest of this footage. Sewing these layers together and adding the binding does not exist in video form. Why don't you make me smile? Why don't you tell me your heart? 이 순간만
Oh, would it be the wife of the king? Because the king has been away for 2 years. Please!
Well, I guess editing me had to come back and say that I did not finish these projects, but I did learn that I need to not set such lofty goals when I am in the middle of so many other things, like moving across the world. Did I get these projects done? No. There's still so many pins. I have to keep delicately moving it because I don't want anything to puncture our couch. I am at the point where it's just hand sewing. So while we're watching TV at night, I can work on this. I also can say I really like quilting, and I like having a project waiting for me that can be done while watching TV or listening to an audiobook or even in the car if it's small enough. I'm also excited because I get to try out my new gift from Khalil. Let's see. Oh, this way I can kind of keep better posture and see what I'm doing without, being like this or anything, because that hump neck posture gets pretty bad. I hope you join me next week as I tackle, let's just say one craft project. And then I also have to, start packing some of this stuff up. So I've got to figure out if this craft is for me and if I want to continue doing it. Who knows what the next video is going to be? I am just going to go into that room and grab a box and see what ideas come.